Hello and welcome to another episode of PPC Town Hall. My name is Fred Vallaeys. I'm your host, also CEO and co-founder and optimizer of PPC management software. So for this first episode of PPC Town Hall in 2026, we're going to go back to the word of the year from 2025. And that word is actually two words. It's vibe coding. So you've probably heard about vibe coding. It's really gained momentum, and we think it's going to continue to grow in importance in the next year. So that's why we wanted to talk about it today. And who better to talk about vibe coding, which is a way of programming, than someone who's been involved very extensively in programming for Google Ads through scripts. And that is Nils Rooijmans. Nils has been involved in artificial intelligence from before people were talking about this. He's been one of the leading voices when it comes to Google Ad scripts. And so I'm really looking forward to hear what his opinion is on vibe coding, where it fits in, how he's using it, and how we can really use it to do better in PPC management and digital marketing. So with that, let's get rolling with this episode of PPC Town Hall. Nils, welcome back. Great to see you again.
Hey, Fred. Thanks for having me. Always a pleasure.
Hey, you're hanging out in the Bahamas these days?
The Caribbean, yes, it's an island, Curacao. It's in the southern parts of the Caribbean, pretty close to Venezuela, which is pretty exciting these days, given the geopolitical things that are happening here. But it's always nice. I love to spend the winter here, so the winter months, November, December, January. Sunshine.
And I believe they speak Dutch in Curacao, right?
Yes, you're right. It's part of the Dutch kingdom, so we have many languages here. The local language is called Papiamento, which is a combination between Portuguese, Spanish, English, and Dutch. But yes, a lot of people speak Dutch.
As a Dutch person, you feel right at home. It's beautiful when you can take the winter months and live somewhere a little bit nicer, warmer. Hey, being there, I really do appreciate you joining us here and talking about vibe coding. But so vibe coding, obviously, it's this big word. It's the word of the year in some of the dictionaries for 2025. But that said, it's very buzzy, and I think a lot of people still don't really know what vibe coding is. So let's start there. What is vibe coding?
Yeah. So basically, vibe coding is a way that to use an AI to explore ideas to build software. So it's not you writing the code, it is actually the AI writing the code for you. And it is you interacting with the AI to come up with the ideas. Basically, you describe the vibe of your idea, and then through interaction with the AI, you build it together. And the AI is building the code for you. So you're not writing JavaScript code or Python or any other programming language. I like to speak to the AI, but you can also use the keyboard, of course. But yeah, through human language, natural language, you come up with ideas for software that the AI is building for you.
Very cool. And so I think one of the fundamental concepts, and maybe the thing not everyone has picked up on quite yet, is that when you go to a chatbot, whether it's ChatGPT or Gemini, we all ask it a language, and whether it be Dutch or English or whatever language you speak, and we get an answer in that language. But there's no reason that these computers and these AIs can't respond in any other language you want, or that could even be a programming language, right? And that's where it is able to start building Python. It's able to build JavaScript. It's able to do a lot of the things that are then usable to another computer system. And that's where vibe coding comes in. But where did that whole concept of vibe coding come from?
Yeah, it's actually funny because I remember maybe a last show that we did a couple of years ago, you and I were already using the LLMs like ChatGPT to create Google Ad scripts for us. And that was basically a precursor of something that is now termed vibe coding, because you and I, we were speaking natural language to the LLM. The LLM was generating the JavaScript for us. And because you and I both can read JavaScript, we knew, oh, this is what we want, but not exactly. So we gave it feedback through text, and then it fixed the scripts for us. That way we were much more productive. But earlier this year, one of the co-founders of OpenAI, Andrew, I believe, coined the term. It became really popular. And it is basically his way of explaining how developers use LLMs these days to generate code and complex software systems. So it became a really popular term this year, and many people started using LLMs this way to actually build rather complex software applications that they can easily create themselves without having to go to a developer, which is great, of course.
And I think you're hitting on an important point there, which is complex systems. Because like you were alluding to, when we were writing Google Ad scripts with the help of GPT, and I think for me it was GPT-4, when it was the first time that it literally took my request and in a single shot produced a fully working code that I didn't have to go back and fix. But these were still singular files, right? It's a single piece of JavaScript code that you copy paste into Google Ads. And in that regard, it's often disconnected from the systems people already use. And it doesn't have a database, and it doesn't have authentication, and it doesn't have all of the other things that are basic plumbing for most of the SaaS software that we use today, but we expected. And so it wasn't able to build those things. But now you're saying we're talking about advanced systems. So does vibe coding enable you to add all of these niceties like having login, connecting to databases, etc.?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yes. It's good you mentioned it because Google Ads scripts, they are relatively small pieces of software that live in the Google Ads platform. So they're relatively simple pieces of software, right? But if you want to build a complete web application, that's much more involved. Sometimes you need a database, you need to set up different systems that communicate with each other, different software packages. And luckily for us, the AI companies, they have created environments where we can basically use the AI to create these software applications. So one of the examples, of course, is Google. Google has an environment called AI Studio where you can easily do it. I think you're a big fan of another one, Vertex, with the V0 dev environment. Replit is another example. There's many out there. So you can use different tools to actually vibe code your application.
Yeah.
And they can actually deploy the software for you, meaning that they can like host the application. So you do not have to set up the servers yourself. And you can basically share what you've built with your team or with your clients. And I hope today, I hope I can show you an example of how easy it is these days to do.
Yeah, let's get queued up here for an example. But so I'm a big fan of Lovable at this point. I was using V0 in the beginning. Now it's mostly Lovable. But you also, again, mentioned a very important point, which in fact, vibe coding as it is being used today is often even easier than what we used to do with getting GPT to write an ad script, because we would still have to take the ad script, we'd have to copy and paste it in the right place. It would have errors. We'd have to copy and paste those errors, bring them back to the GPT, say, fix these errors, then we get new code, and we'd have to copy and paste that. And so it was still this whole slog of back and forth. But like you mentioned, depending on which system you're using, the result is hosted right there in your browser. They figure out how to deploy it, how to host it. So the experience, which we're going to take a look at here in a minute, but it's literally as simple as having a chat with the system. It produces the code, and rather than showing you the code, it shows you the actual app that's been built, and you can interact with the app. And if something is broken, it can look at the app. It literally has screenshot capability. It looks over your shoulder and it sees what it didn't do correctly, and it goes and fixes it. But let's take a look. I think you have an example of how we can deploy this for PPC, right?
Sure, yeah. But before I show the example, maybe just to compare it, how I was involved with software development like 10, 15 years ago. And back then, there was, let's start, like, I'm an old guy, sorry. 20 years ago, we had something in software development that was called the waterfall method. So basically, the product manager had an idea about what the product should look like. And he would come in with a team and say, okay, this is roughly what I have in mind. And that would be a product developer. He would write requirements, user interface specifications. Then there would be functional requirements, technical requirements. These would be written down in documents, handed over to the software architect. He would architecture the structure for the software, and that would be handed over to the developers. They would do the coding, and then hopefully within 6, 8, 12, in reality 30 weeks, you would get a alpha version of the software. You could test it, and then you would have to write down the feedback that would go through the same process again to the developers, and they would hopefully fix the things that you wanted to have fixed as a product manager. That whole process, that is completely gone, as in it's really fast, really interactive now with these new software that is available to us. With the vibe coding, you can do anything like that in minutes or hours. So this whole idea of coming up with ideas to build software that will help you grow your business, it is can be available to people with zero technical expertise, zero development skills. You can simply literally build it in a few minutes.
Is to this concept of on-demand software. So Sam Altman introduced that at the launch of GPT-5. And so this whole coming out of a world where software has to be built in the way that you've explained, That also makes it expensive. That means that you have to pay a lot of money to another company usually to get the software that does the things you need it to do. But now we're going into a world where it is much more on the fly. It's, oh, I have a need. I'm hosting a party next weekend and I don't like Evite for sending out my invitations, but I know these are the 5 things I need the system to do. You tell it to a vibe coding tool, it puts it all together, and within an hour, you've got something that works well enough. And is it perfect? No, but is it good enough to do what you needed it to do? Is it saving you time? And that's the point. It's this whole new way of thinking about tools and capabilities.
Right.
All right, let's take a look at Google AI Studio. So for the people listening, we do have a video of this on YouTube. Nils is going to take us through building an app with Gemini.
So Gemini, Google also has an environment. It's called AI Studio. And inside the AI Studio, there is a builder. And the builder basically allows you to use Gemini to create software in a vibe coding manner. This is the interface. I'm simply going to speak to it, and I'm going to describe my ID and then see where Gemini will take us, okay? So let me quickly test if that is working. I need you to build a web app that will help me create Google Ads campaigns based on a single landing page. Okay. The input should be one field where I can copy paste the URL of the landing page. And then I need you to present keywords, RSA headlines, RSA descriptions, site links, callout extensions. I'd like to be able to select the keywords and the headlines and the description and the site links, etc., that I want to use. I'd also like to see an output button that would generate a CSV file that I can use as a bulk upload in my Google Ads account, or I can simply copy paste it in the Google Ads editor. Okay, so I basically came up with these specifications. I think there's a lot of things that I probably should be adding to the specification to get something that is really working, but let's just see where it's going to take us from here. Yes, so I just spoke to Gemini. It listened to my ID, and now it is analyzing my train of thought, basically. It is thinking about what kind of application I'm looking for. It's doing some research in the back, and it is creating some files. As you can see on the left here, there's an HTML file, something that's called JSON. Don't worry if you don't know what it means. TS files. This is a little bit of the technical details that normally you would need to worry about, because if you were to build an application like this, you would need to be a developer. But now the AI is doing the development work for you. So it's creating the files that will create the software for the web application that hopefully will be finished in a few seconds. And in the meantime, it is presenting suggestions based on the initial ideas. So these cards, okay, so I'm just gonna click through them. Incorporate audience targeting suggestions. Oh, that's actually a good idea, right? Because if we are creating a new campaign, sometimes we also want to include audience targeting in there. So could be something we could add to it. Images with the Nano Banana Pro. Great suggestion, because I didn't talk about image extensions, image assets, but these can be of value as well. So it understood my request, and it already started providing suggestion parallel to working on the application. Okay, so it finished in, let's say, 2 or 3 minutes, and here we have an ads generator AI that can turn your URL into a campaign. Let's open up one of my landing pages. So I'm just going to copy a URL here. This is, let me quickly show it to you. So this is one of my services where people can book a call, and I will help them fix any bugs in Google Ads scripts. So there's some text here, not a lot. It's basically a very basic landing page on my website. But if I wanted to advertise this through Google Ads and I didn't know anything about this type of business, there's always a lot of work involved in doing research, right? Keyword research. You would have to think about the USPs, the benefits to come up with the ad copy. You will need to create the site links, the callout extensions, negative keywords, etc. It's a lot of work. So let's say you have a small agency where you have many different clients that, like for instance, you're doing Google Ads for dentists or for a certain type of lawyers. And most probably you will have tens, hundreds of clients that have like similar landing pages. Ideally, you would have a tool where you could simply insert the landing page and then say, generate assets or generate the campaign form. So hopefully this tool is going to do so.
Yeah, what we're looking at here is literally something that was built on the fly, right? You didn't pre-build this. This is 2 minutes
Exactly.
of you talking and
So
it
here you go.
suggesting.
Wow, this
Okay,
is
now what we see on the screen here is a full output with columns for keywords, RSA headlines, and RSA descriptions. So take us through this, Nils.
So it analyzed the content on this website and it suggests keywords. Keywords are Google Ads Script Support. That's relevant. That's good. Google Ads Script Help, Google Ads Script Expert, PPC Script Assistant, Fix Google Ads Script. These are all keywords highly relevant to the service that I'm offering here. It also suggests match types, and I can simply select, like I asked for it, I can select or deselect the keywords. So let's say I want to target these keywords, have a look at the headlines, Google Ads Script Support, Expert Script Assistant, Fix your ad scripts now, one-on-one script help. Not bad at all, right? Obviously, a lot of things could be improved.
A couple of things to point out here too is that your prompt, what you asked it to build, never specified things like you should be able to select or you should say how long a headline is, that it needs to stay within the bounds of what is allowed in Google Ads. But all these things the LLMs figure out because they had that understanding of, oh, Nils is trying to do Google Ads. And so it understands that Google Ads has headlines and there's 25 character limit, and it understands the character limits for descriptions. And it naturally decides that that is a logical thing to show. And that's what it's done. So that's the beauty of these systems is you don't have to go into a ton of detail. It figures out what you likely would have wanted.
Exactly. Yeah, and you bring a good point because that's also one of the reasons I like to use AI Studio, because it is Gemini, a Google service, right? So it has a lot of knowledge about the Google ecosystem with all the different tools, including Google Ads. So I find that if I develop an app inside Google AI Studio, it's less effort to integrate it with my other Google tools, including Google Ads. So that knowledge that you just described about the character limits for headlines and RSA descriptions, I think the other LLMs would also know about that. But yeah, it got that. But here's, for instance, it created 6 descriptions, but all 6 of them have more than 90 characters. So probably I can, if we go back, provide feedback that it can only suggest descriptions that actually meet the limitations of the 90 characters. It will fix it in the next one. We can try to site links.
What's very cool here is that despite showing headlines that are too long, it actually has marked itself already as that's an error because it knows it should only be 90. Okay. So there's already, because you can imagine a system that just writes 100 characters, doesn't even bother to tell you, and then you try to upload it. That's when you find out it's not going to work. And I see these things evolving quite quickly. So when I was vibe coding, even a couple of months ago, the results would come back. There'd be many errors. They would take 6 iterations and it would sometimes struggle to fix those errors. But nowadays, when I use Lovable, sometimes I ask it to fix one thing and then it fixes that one thing. And then it comes back and says, and by the way, while I was looking at the code, I also noticed this other thing that seems wrong. And I fixed that as well on the fly. So these systems are evolving super, super quickly when it comes to doing the right thing.
Exactly. Yeah. That's also what tools cannot do today. It's amazing what they can do next week. And also the difference between the tools, like I mentioned, the distinction between AI Studio and V0 or Lovable, the providers are always playing catch up, as in if the one tool is providing a feature that creates high value for the users, the other ones will simply copy it, and the development is really quickly these days. I always like to recommend people to stick to one tool and then try to master it and not go after the shiny objects with testing all these different AI tools that are available these days. Every now and then, yes, you should spend some time testing them, but don't spend too much time playing around with copies of similar tools because it's just, in my experience, a waste of time. So just to finish this demonstration, maybe to finish this demonstration, we're going to copy the output to the clipboard, see if that works. And then hopefully, if I create a new Google Sheet here, with a little bit of luck, it will generate output that we can, there you go. Having a look at the heading here, I'm not 100% sure this is going to work if as a bulk upload, but people who have worked with Google Ads Editor or bulk uploads already recognize that this is almost what we want for an upload to Google Ads. So in theory, this could already work. And otherwise, we would need to instruct it to have a look at the specifications of the templates that Google Ads Editor or bulk uploads use to upload this information to Google Ads. You would simply upload. But getting back to my preference for AI Studio is that you still need to copy paste this into Editor or a bulk upload. Why not have this app talk to the Google Ads API directly? So that is actually one of the things. It's a bit more complicated and we can't do this within the hour, but you could have an app running that has access to the Google Ads API. And then you can literally say, okay, I'm happy with this. Instead of downloading a CSV, just add it to my account. So you could create an app like this literally within an hour that would make the changes inside your Google Ads account. And then if you're happy with the result, I want to show you how easy it is to share it with your colleagues or even maybe your clients or your boss. You can simply deploy the app online. So this is running inside my AI Studio right now. So nobody can see it but me. And if I want to share this with other people in my team, I simply click the deploy the app button. I select a cloud project. So I prepared the vibe coding demo. It's basically a Google Cloud project that's going to host the app. I'm going to say deploy it. Okay, this is going to take a few minutes, but then it'll be running inside the Google Cloud and I will get a URL and I can simply direct people to the URL and they can use this tool. So again, oh, there you go. It's already there. It's not the right one. There you go. So it's not a really pretty URL, but we can change that as well. You can upload the app to Vertex or some other environment. But
the point is that you're making very easy to get it onto a URL that's publicly shareable. And then if you wanted to actually start selling this to a customer, maybe you can put a nicer domain on there. Okay, so we're doing a test here using this new tool for the optimizer.com domain. And let's see if it understands what we do, which if it doesn't, that's maybe a reflection on our website. And maybe then we need to tell our web team to fix a few things. But let's see what comes out of here.
Right, so ideally, this would already generate something that is highly relevant. But if it's not, then we can go back and provide some feedback to the development part. As you can see, I'm going to zoom in a little bit to make it easier to read. I think this is already really good, right? PPC management software, yes. Google Ads optimization, maybe that's a little bit too broad. PPC automation tool. So a tool like this, it took us like 5-10 minutes to develop, and it will increase the productivity of your team immensely, because stuff like this, keyword research, creating ad copy, it always takes a lot of time, right?
It does. Yeah, so hey, a lot of work being done here by the computer in very little amount of time. This must be super expensive. How much does it cost?
That's a good question, yeah. AI Studio is free to a certain extent. I'm using the pro model. I forgot about it. It's $20 or $50 a month. If you want to host it in the cloud, the application that you develop, you also have to pay, I don't know, 10, 20, 30 bucks. It's not really expensive. You have other environments like Lovable and V0 on Vertex. If you deploy it there, it's a bit more expensive, but I think the deployment part is a bit easier, and the look and feel, in my opinion, it feels more professional and nicely than AI Studio. So you have to play around with it a little bit to see your preference, but it's never really that expensive, and especially not if you compare it to the cost of developing these software with the use of developers that you need to hire.
Exactly. And the pricing models, I think, are still evolving to a large degree. So again, I'm mostly using Lovable, so I know that system the best. You can start for free. You get 5 credits per day for free usage. And those 5 credits will let you build an app like the one you saw here today from an initial generation. But now the next thing that probably happens is you're like, oh, this is cool, but I wish that it suggested different ad groups and maybe it was theming some of the keywords together, and maybe all these bells and whistles, right? And that's when you start eating into these credit systems, and that's when you end up upgrading to the $20 per month plan that gives you a couple of paid credits. And then as soon as you hit that limit, it just asks you to upgrade, and you keep upgrading. And interestingly enough, Lovable was the fastest company to 100 million in revenue in history, in the history of the world. So clearly a lot of people, including myself, spending a decent amount of money on this. But again, the alternative is I hire a developer and I go through this months-long process. And we have a great development team at Optimizer, and we're continuing to build, but they also become more effective developers thanks to these types of capabilities. But let's talk about that for a second, Neil. So you having a programming background, there's this whole other class of tools which are, say, like codecs that help engineers do this type of stuff. Like, where's that breakdown, and why would people use one type of system versus another?
Yeah, great question. So yeah, so the interface like this, like I just showed you, and also the V0 and the Lovable, I think they're great for rapid prototyping. So I can imagine you and your organization are using tools like this to illustrate to your developers what kind of functionality you want to add to Optimizer. And you can illustrate it easily because you can literally build it within a few minutes or an hour. But the software is typically the software that is being generated by tools like these is not production ready, meaning that it does a great job at illustrating what you wanted to achieve, and it brings you 80 to 90%, but it's not really robust. It's really not reliable. It's not ready to scale to the level that you need for all your clients. It's not secure because it's easy to hack things in. So in my experience, it's great for rapid prototyping, but if you want professional software being deployed in a business, then you still need developers to have a look at the code. And that is also one of the good things about these environments, because you can simply go in and have a look at the code. So I'm doing here. So if you understand code, you can simply go in there, and for instance, this Gemini service, maybe if I zoom in here, I can see the prompt. So another thing is that I didn't explain anything about writing ad copy, right? So the quality of the site links and the ad copy is mediocre. But if I improve the prompt that is being used by this software, then I get much better headlines, much better descriptions. So that is an example of the changes you can make if you understand a little bit of the code, or you can do it through the suggestions as well. But long story being short, the quality of the code is good, but it's not at the level of professional software that is being developed by real software engineers yet. So I wouldn't recommend using vibe coding tools like this for very complex applications that need a lot of backend logic, database connections. It's good for basic, simple web apps like the demonstrations that I just gave. And I think you also created a Chrome extension, which is also a great example of how you can use tools like this. But for complex software systems, it's good for
exactly. And that's the whole notion of on-demand software, right? It's if this is something that you're building for your own productivity, like it's almost a no-brainer because you're the only one using it. Security is not that big of a concern. But the moment that you do deploy it and want to scale it, you do have to have secure login. You have to make sure the data doesn't get stolen. You have to make sure that the servers stay up. And again, it then depends on what system you use, but Lovable allows you to scale up the size of server infrastructure that you put behind it. And obviously it costs more money if you go to a bigger deployment, but these things can be done. Now, Niels, you did bring up an interesting point, right? This app that you've just vibe coded is using Gemini AI to look up a site and then generate ad headlines for that. You've gone into the code to try to find what is the prompt it is using to do that AI magic. But I suspect you can also just, in the code assistant, ask it the question. So can we try that? Can you say, tell me the prompt you're using to do the ad generation?
That's right.
Because I think what that illustrates, if this works, is that you still don't have to be technical, right? It's nice you can go and look at the code, but even if you don't want to look at the code, you can ask it, like, how did you code this particular piece of the software? Or if you're doing some math, say you're calculating bids or budgets, maybe on a prediction method, you can ask it, well, what statistical method did you use, and show me the mathematical equation. I don't need to see the code, but tell me what math went into the code that you wrote.
Exactly. Yeah, so let's give that a try. Show me the prompt you use to generate the headlines and RSA descriptions. and 3 ways to improve that prompt.
Okay, so play by play here, but Niels was dictating that into the system, so it's much faster than typing. So now it is thinking about that using Gemini 3 Pro, and it gives you little updates there along the way. It says what it's doing so that you get a sense for it not being stuck. And then usually the systems that I use, it can take 2-3 minutes per answer. So it can be a little frustrating. So I tend to run a vibe coding window on one side and then another window where I do my usual day-to-day work or some online shopping, but I'll always do 2 things at the same time. And I've talked to engineers at OpenAI, and they basically have 3 or 4 vibe coding in parallel. They can each complete when they complete, and then they can go deeper on the web.
Exactly. Yeah. I have the same, and that also brings back to the question about the different tools, right? Because I'm using like a tool like AI Studio, V0 for these rapid prototyping things, and then if I'm happy and I think, okay, this is something that I really want to deploy, then I like to use Cursor, which is like a development environment for software engineers, to basically get the code to a next level that is production ready. And inside Cursor, you can actually create different agents that will help you with different tasks that are required to get the code production ready. So for instance, you would have an agent that checks for security, another agent that would check for performance and scalability, another agent that would check for API connections, or maybe improvements in the software from readability and maintainability perspective. So inside Cursor, you can create multiple agents that work in parallel to upgrade the code to the level that is required to get it production ready. Now, as you can see here on the left,
what is the layer?
It shows.
Go ahead.
As you can see here on the left, it has provided the answer to our question about the prompt. So it shows the JavaScript where it has the prompt. I'm a Google Ads expert. I need to analyze the following landing page URL, blah, 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 blah. So this is a long prompt with constraints. And then it also suggests 3 ways to improve this prompt. Now, if we read through this, based on our knowledge of what good ad copy looks like, we might agree with the suggestions and say, okay, incorporate these into improving the prompt, and we don't have to go into the code to do it ourselves because this tool will do it for us.
Cool. So yeah, it is like a developer. You can talk to it as if it was a human, and it can also start to understand what is your level of expertise, right? You can say, hey, listen, I'm non-technical, so don't talk to me about React because I don't know what React is. And sometimes it's also going to say, hey, you just told me you want to connect to the Google Ads API, and you told me to go into the Google Developer Console and like something about OAuth. Like, I get confused. Okay, but so you tell it, can you explain this more? Can you point me in the right direction? Here's where I am. Like, can you help me get to the right place? And it will walk you through all of these things. So it's really cool because it can write code, but it can also guide you to where you need to be to take that next step that's necessary to get you where you want to be.
Right.
Niels, you also talked about deploying, right? So maybe you go into Cursor as a next step. So the code that you just produced in vibe coding, is this now throwaway work, or how do you get that to your engineers to do something else with?
So I could send it over to my engineers and they would be like, okay, we're going to completely refactor this, as they call it, which would be a lot of work for them. Or they could use Cursor and agents to do. Many of the developers, most of them, already use something like Claude Code, Codex, or Cursor to help them improve their productivity by using the AI to help them improve the quality of the code in ways that is important to them as a software developer. For us, these technical requirements to make it production ready, us as non-developers, we're not really that interested in that. We're interested in the functionality that the tool has. But the software developers know that there is more to it, and they use tools like I mentioned, like Cursor, Claude Code, Codex, GitHub Copilot. These are the kinds of tools that the techies use to improve the quality. Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't use these tools or start playing around with them, because you can use these tools to build agents, which is the next level, right? You can create AI agents that will help you with completely different tasks. So you can, for instance, inside Claude Code, you can create agents that will help you have a look at your emails and already generate standard replies to all the emails you have today. Or, I don't know, transcript and generate blog posts from your YouTube videos. So you can create different agents for different tasks that run on your machine and do the work for you. So there's another example of using AI in an interactive way. It's sort of like vibe coding the AI agent to teach it what needs to be done, having a look at what it is doing and how it is performing, and then through interacting with the agent, improve the quality of its work.
And that's really cool. So when it comes to these agents, are you saying you would use the Code AI Studio from Google to build an agent, or do you have a different sort of tool that helps you build these agents?
So the thing is, with the agents, I like to use Claude Code, and inside Claude Code, you can create agents. You can teach them skills with providing like instructions, like you would give instructions to an LLM with a system prompt. A system prompt would basically be something like you put the LLM on stage, right? So you act as a experienced PPC expert with a lot of experience in optimizing ad copy. Your job today is to improve the ad headlines for a blah, 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 blah. So these kinds of instructions you can use as well to create agents inside Claude Code. And then you can have these agents perform different tasks for you on your local machine. For instance, connect with Gmail, go through your inbox, and reply to all the unread emails, or create a draft so that you can easily reply to them, or simply archive all the things that are unimportant or spammy. And based on its behavior, you can train that agent to improve its performance. So you have that agent that is going through your email, and then you will see, oh, okay, you decided that this was a bit spammy, but it's not because of this and this reason. So I'm going to update these instructions. So it's still me updating the instructions. So I can see this changing, well, maybe also already next year, where I don't have to explain why it's not spammy, or I don't have to explain why I was changing the reply that the agent has generated for me. I simply make minor changes to the reply and then send it, and then the agent will be observing my behavior and learning from it. I think that is very near on the horizon.
And I think that maybe raises another good question. So, at what point do you just pay someone for a tool that does this versus build it yourself? And I think in this scenario, because you constantly have to retrain it and make it better, and it's clearly responding to email, you're going to be doing that for the next couple of years of your career, right? So maybe that is where you pay someone to do the upkeep for you, keep making it better. Whereas something like, hey, I've got this one-off project for a client, and it's going to take me 8 hours of work, but I could vibe code something that helps me do it in 2 hours. And after that, I might never do that sort of project for a couple of months. But by that point, I'll just vibe code a new version of it that is more in line with the current state of the industry. So that's how I would think about when I buy versus build. What do you think about buy versus build in that case?
Yeah, great question. The software that I like to use that is not critical for my business, I can easily vibe code it, because if it can make mistakes that are not very costly, if I'm convinced that it cannot make a mistake that is very costly, then I'm really happy vibe coding it. If on the other hand it is something that I feel there is a huge risk involved if it does make big mistakes, like for instance changing things inside Google Ads accounts for my clients, then I want to be sure that the software is not easy to hack. I want it to be reliable, and I want it to have certain constraints. And because of that, and because I have a background in reading code, I like to have a look at the code and make sure that it is doing exactly the kinds of things that I would allow it to do. Now, if you're not a developer yourself, I would recommend hiring a developer to have a look at these kinds of applications before you start using them. Yeah, and I think also, like you mentioned in your books, it's you keep the human in the loop, right? The AI is doing a great job, but it's our job to basically tell the AI what is good behavior and what is bad behavior. We need to put the guardrails in place so that it doesn't go out of hand.
Exactly. Guardrails are such a big thing in 2026 with all this automation. Now, maybe in what you said, maybe we're starting to discourage people from doing some vibe coding, but I think one interesting element that's come out for me is often as a marketer or a business person or whatever role you have, in your head it's, oh, there is this simple thing that I need to do and just make the code, right? Make the software. And then you do that initial prompt and you look at it and you're like, oh wait, like it's suggesting keywords, but it didn't look at what other keywords I have in my account and whether there's overlap in targeting and whether the budgets are like split. And so you very quickly start to understand that what was a simple thing in your head actually has a lot of layers of sophistication. And that's a big benefit, because if you can go through that with this vibe coding tool, and even if it's not perfectly connected to Google Ads and it's not perfectly pulling in all the data you have, but you can start to specify what it needs to do. Now you can give it to an engineer and it is so much better spec, because part of what you were describing is that 36 months of the developer going and doing the thing. And then it comes back here like, wait, you didn't consider the factors, other keywords and other campaigns and ad groups. And it's, no, you didn't tell us, right? So maybe that's why they missed it. But this forces you to really think through, what does the tool need to do? And so the developer is still going to take 36 months, but what comes out of it is going to be a hell of a lot better in that first version than if you hadn't gone through that process initially.
Yeah, that is a great point. Exactly. It's also during my training, that's exactly how I like to use LLMs for generating Google Ads scripts. First, to basically convince the LLM that it needs to ask a lot of questions about the requirements, because we're not aware of the requirements most of the time, right? We don't know exactly what we want. So if the LLM starts asking questions, oh, you're right, we should think about this and this as well, we should make choices like that, and then it will generate a pseudocode version of what it is going to build. And that pseudocode basically is a very explicit definition of the thing that we wanted to have built. And if we can get there through these like natural communication with the interaction with the AI in a way that doesn't require us to know anything about coding, that's just a huge, huge, huge win.
And so in the example that you gave today, we did a single prompt generation. But what you're saying now is like, that was just an example, right? Like maybe the better scenario is that you go and talk to GPT and you tell it, this is kind of what I'm trying to do. Ask me questions like, what am I missing? What should I be asking the vibe coding tool to do for me? And so now you spend half an hour going back and forth and you put it in voice mode, right? Because nobody wants to type anymore. So you put it in voice mode, you have that conversation as if it was a human product manager. And then what it spits out might be, and I've talked to OpenAI people, but like they have 10,000 word prompts as the initial prompt.
Yeah.
And that's pretty sophisticated, but that includes things like, what is our preference for the language to use and stylistic preferences, and what do we need to consider in terms of security and UI design. And so all of that can go into that initial prompt if you wanted to. I also don't want to make it sound scary, like that's what you need to do it right. You can go either path, but it is your choice. You can make it as sophisticated as you want.
Yeah, start small, and then just take incremental steps to improve the quality and also the complexity. And it's relatively easy to get started. And once you get started, you get a feel for what is possible, and it will activate a mindset that is required to take you to the next step. And then the AI, the LLM, will actually guide you in the next step. And if you enjoy the experience, which I guarantee you will, because it's a superpower, you will gradually increase your understanding of what is possible and also the complexity of the apps you're going to build.
And Nils, I can't tell you the number of nights that I've been up past midnight vibe coding, something I haven't done in a long time because we got a big engineering team at Optimizer, but it's fun, it's addictive, it's productive.
Yeah.
And I've actually put some vibe coded tools into production. I've got one fun little one I did. It's called triviadis.com. It lets you generate a little quiz about some topic you want, and then you can play it right there. I've just we vibe coded an advent calendar, a countdown calendar for the holidays that has prizes from a lot of PPC experts, and put that into production. And again, these are still relatively low risk. This is not changing budgets and multi-million-dollar ads campaigns. But still, it's got security, it's got privacy policies, got all of those things in place, and you can launch it. Again, really cool stuff. And I agree with what you said. Go out there today, use any of the vibe coding tools, put something in, see what it does, because it's going to be wild and it's going to be fun. Nils, a couple of pointers, maybe, like any mistakes you have faced that we can help people avoid?
Good question. Yeah. So one of the biggest mistakes is thinking that once you have something that is working, then that it's production ready, because there will always be edge cases, edge scenarios that you haven't thought of yet, that if you put it into production, that other users will encounter these errors. And if it could be a big mistake that can cause some harm. So vibe coding can get you to 90%, but don't expect it to be 100% unless it's relatively easy, simple task. That is one. Another one would be that's actually a bit contradictory, because I'd like to say if you spend too much time thinking about the code and looking at the code, that is not vibe coding anymore. Then you're becoming a software developer. So if you're in the vibe coding mode, don't think about the code or the JavaScript or the Python itself that much, even if you understand what's going to happen, because it will slow you down in that creative process of improving the idea. You're really in the vibe of improving upon the idea and building the app. So don't worry about the code too much.
Yeah. And know what your purpose is, right? And I find myself at some point, you just have to take 2 days to connect stuff to the backend systems, to make the security correct, to put in the terms and conditions, work with lawyers to put in privacy policies. That stuff is not fun. But you go into that mode, okay, this is what I'm going to get through. And then you go back to the mode of, okay, now I'm going to look at the app. Now I'm going to make it more usable. Now I'm going to make it more fun. And that's when you're vibing, right? And it's jumping back and forth is important. But then the other thing that I find myself sometimes doing is going down rabbit holes. And so you have to be, I have to keep a list on a piece of paper. Here's the big things. I just thought of this other thing that's like an edge case, like you said. I need to check on that edge case, because then you look at the page and say, the button is blue, but I wish it was red. Okay, let's go change it. And then you go down these rabbit holes, and eventually you're like, oh, but the big things that actually matter the most, I haven't even gotten to. So just keep that list so that you don't go too far off track.
Yeah, good one.
Good. Nils, you're doing a lot of teaching, right? Are you teaching any vibe coding in addition to Google Ad scripts?
Not yet, but I might in the future, yeah. So currently I'm just explaining how to use these AIs to create Google Ad scripts, because the main advantage of using Google Ad scripts is still they operate inside the Google Ads platform, relatively cheap, easy, and they can manipulate entities inside the Google Ads platform. So a lot of the software that we create using vibe coding, unless you have an API connection to the Google Ads, which is relatively difficult to set up, it cannot change anything inside Google Ads. So Google Ads scripts are my preferred tools to monitor the performance of Google Ads and make minor changes inside the Google Ads platform. And vibe coding is to create apps that live outside of the Google Ads platform that can help me. For instance, I don't know, yesterday I created a web interface to help me compare two lists. So for instance, if I have a shopping campaign and I decide to increase my max CPC bid with a portfolio target CPC bid, then the way shopping campaigns work is it'll show your ads to a whole different set of search terms. So before I upped the bid, there was a set A of search terms, and after there was set B. I want to see the difference between the two. Inside the Google Ads interface, it's relatively hard to do, right? Of course, I could create a script to send me an email to them, but sometimes for me, it's just easier. Okay, I have these two Google Sheets, just compare them and show the difference, right? So I created this app that allows me to simply insert two links to different Google Sheets, and it will create a nice table with the differences between them. So I can see what new search terms my products are being shown for after I've upped the bid.
Yeah. And that kind of makes me think of another mistake that I've made, which is sometimes I do something the old way. I have a big project. So we did a CRM migration, and I decided to use the tools from the CRM platforms and bulk sheets to move data back and forth. And eventually I just hit some limit because the bulk sheet wasn't able to take every entity. But these entities existed in API. And I was like, if I'd started vibe coding this from the beginning, like all the simple stuff like the bulk sheets, it would have done that in 5 minutes. And it would have set me up to immediately get into the more complicated edge cases, which you can do with the API. And I ended up spending 2 days not doing vibe coding to do this project. And I was like, I do need vibe coding because I'm stuck. And then vibe coding got me over the finish line. But I think, again, it's that experience of having done it, knowing what vibe coding can do, so that you start to solve your problems. Like you're saying, a very simple problem you had, and you were like, it's going to take 10 minutes. But if you hadn't tested it before, if you didn't know what vibe coding was, you would never have gone down that path, and you would have probably never had a solution for this thing. And so that's why I'm so excited, is because all of these little frustrations that we have, or all of these great ideas that we all have, all of a sudden, like you said, it's a superpower. We can go and build these things. We can solve them today, not tomorrow. We don't have to ask someone. We do it today. And I've worked with friends. I've got a vibe coding lounge here at the Optimizer offices in Mountain View. And I have friends coming in here who've literally been sitting on ideas for years, and they've just never had the drive to talk to their developers or talk to their team, because they knew what was coming. They knew they were going to spend half a year describing it and waiting and having frustration along the way. And they come into the Vibe Code studio here, and they walk out the same afternoon and they got a working prototype.
Awesome.
And some of these things actually, like one guy that I was working with presented his Vibe Code to the CEO of Adobe, and the CEO was super happy at Adobe. Like, they have engineers, right? But vibe coding was making this person stand out above everyone else. So
Nice.
it's really, really cool what people are doing.
Nice. I'd like to join one day. I'm buying a ticket to San Francisco now.
All right. Yeah, hit us up in the comments. Anyone who wants to come hang out at the Vibe Studio and build some cool stuff together.
Yeah, let's do that.
We got the space.
Yeah. Also, maybe one last thing.
No, go.
Because you mentioned the person presenting a prototype at Adobe. I think especially the smaller corporations that didn't have any developers before, they will see a revolutionary change in the way they operate their business. I think the bigger corporations, they already have they have like developers, they have product developers. So the mindset of what automation can bring to the business is already sort of like implemented in the organization. And AI and vibe coding will be the next evolutionary step in that process. But for smaller companies, smaller agencies as well, that don't have any technical skills in the organization, this is going to be massive. This is going to really be revolutionary, because these people can literally use software in a way that wasn't possible before. They didn't have the money to hire the developers. They didn't have the know-how to do it themselves, and they didn't have the ideas of what was possible. And I think that's going to be a dramatic change in the next few years.
Yeah, and I'm also seeing a lot of like recombinant innovation, where I build one thing or I see one thing, and I'm like, wait, if we change this one little thing, all of a sudden it becomes a marketing piece of software as opposed to whatever it was doing before. And again, I'm thinking about this advent calendar, right? So it's a countdown calendar. And I'm like, why don't we turn that into a teaching course? Every day you get a small nugget, because people are busy. A lot of people don't want to spend 4 hours in a class learning something, but we're all on social media, right? We can consume 2 minutes of something that helps us along the path. So it's recombinant innovation. You see these things that are like, what if for my business it was able to do these things? And that's a cool thing too in Lovable. When I build something, I can publish it with a remix button, where you can then literally go and grab it and say, remix this. It puts a copy into your Lovable, and now you can prompt it and you can start branching, basically make your own version of it. And so as a community, we've always been so good in PPC, and you've been great at sharing stuff. I'm really excited about how even vibe coding is going to become a community effort.
Yeah, I didn't know that. That's cool. I should check it out. Yeah.
Well, good. Nils, I know you've got some Curacao and outdoor activities to get to. Thank you so much for sharing all of your wisdom around vibe coding. This has been awesome. Hope to have you back later in 2026 to share more of what you've been working on. And people, find Nils on LinkedIn. See what he's up to. He's got a great newsletter. I always enjoy reading that, so subscribe to that as well. Nils, remind people where they can find you.
Yeah, so if you simply Google my name with scripts, you will find my website and a lot of free Google Ads scripts. There's also a newsletter on my website, so nilsrooijmans.com/newsletter, where I share daily tips to optimize and boost your Google Ads performance.
Great. Okay, awesome. Thanks everyone for watching this episode. If you want to know when Nils is coming back on or about other guests, please subscribe, hit that like button, interact with us in the comments if you have any questions or any ideas, or you get stuck on vibe coding. We're happy to, of course, help you with that. With that, thank you for watching PPC Town Hall. Nils, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you for the next one.